Welcome everyone. We will be starting in 10 minutes. Thank you. Hi everyone. We'll be starting in 5 minutes. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to the Product Leadership Festival 2020. Before we start our first session of the day, I would like to welcome our host of the evening, Mr. Sai Satish Vedam. Sai is a senior faculty and an executive coach at Institute of Product Leadership. He was most recently the Director of Product Management at Oracle. Welcome, Sai.
Thank you, Sonal, and I'm really excited to be back here. Welcome all of you to day 3 of Product Leadership Festival. We have a couple of amazing sessions, incredible speakers to gather some insights around, especially around today, career insights in products, data, and design. So before we get to the sessions, I'd like to quickly give a brief about, spend a couple of minutes about Institute of Product Leadership, which is also conducting this conference. IPL, for those of you who are not familiar with, started in 2012 as India's first technology institute for technology managers, helping them make career path transformations in the area of product leadership. The Institute designs and delivers programs for senior professionals who are looking into transitioning into their careers into products. IPL works with various partner universities across and have offered this program to more than 2,000 folks now, right? And, as part of that journey in the last 7 years, IPL has created a very robust and active product community, right? A community of product professionals, both aspiring and folks who are already in the product roles today. And so, with respect to inviting several open speakers, right? We have an open conference day on May 2nd, where you can also nominate a topic that you want to speak on. And lots of our alumni from various companies who've been in senior roles have nominated themselves in the topics, some very interesting topics. So feel free to go to that link, which is shown on the, sorry, let me share my screen, Sonal, if you don't mind. I missed doing that.
Sure.
Thank you. I hope you can see this screen now. Right. So open conference day, take out your mobile phones, just to do a quick QR scan on the camera. It'll directly take you to the page where many of the speakers from the community have nominated themselves and very interesting topics. So go ahead and vote for your favorite topics, right? So there are some exciting ones which you want to hear. And the approach that we're taking here is an unconference approach, which means, people who get shortlisted by the number of votes will get to speak on that. And if the speaker or topic that you have voted on get shortlisted, win some amazing prizes. So go ahead and do that right away. There's also another interesting approach that we're taking to make this a little more exciting by way of a simple game, a gamification, if you will. There is a leaderboard that is created. And if you scan the QR code again using your mobile app, you will go to that leaderboard webpage directly. There are some couple of minor steps that you can take. And with every step, you gain some points, right? And you are ranked on a leaderboard that you see. And whoever gets onto the top will get an exclusive one-on-one 30-minute discussion with an industry executive on career counseling, right? So it's an incredible opportunity. It's not easy to get time from senior leaders, executives, especially in the context of career path guidance. So make use of that. Use your phone and do a QR scan. Now, by the way, these URLs, if you're not able to scan, will also be posted on the chat, the Zoom chat that you would see. So we have a very, very interesting topic today, and I think very relevant and pertinent with superbly qualified panelists. And I will introduce them in a minute but before that, let me go ahead and say a few more things on how we can keep this engaging, right? More interactive. You can all encourage all of you to ask questions, of course, relevant to the topic under discussion. And instead of asking those questions in the Zoom chat that you see, Use the QR code again on the left, on the right side. Scan it, it will directly take you to the LinkedIn thread for this particular session, right? So every session gets its own dedicated LinkedIn thread, and you ask those questions there. The advantage of asking the question in LinkedIn is it will still continue to be there, and the panelists can answer that even after the session is over. If you ask a question in the Q&A chat box here on Zoom, once the session closes, that questions are gone. And also it's hard to monitor those questions because there will be a lot of other chatter going on. So that link should also be posted on the Q&A or chat window of your Zoom. Go ahead and click it if you're not able to scan this one. The other last one I wanted to mention to all of you is I will be monitoring the questions. The team will be monitoring the questions on the LinkedIn thread, and we will pick the best question for this session. And whoever asks that question will get again an amazing prize, right? So we'll come back to this and see at the end of the session who got the prize and who is ranking top on the leaderboard. So with that, I'd like to start introducing our panelists. Can I request the panelists to turn on their video so that we can all see them? Great, awesome. Excellent. So as I said, we have very senior HR leaders and folks who are actively also hiring in the area of products. So let me actually introduce each of them. I'd start with Ram Prasad. Yes, welcome to the discussion. Thanks for being here. Ram is the president of Expansion, interestingly spelt, but apparently pronounced Expansion, which is a UST global company in the area of product services. I'm sure many of the folks have heard of, in India especially, engineering services company, but few may have heard of product services company, which is the Expansion and UST Global works with product companies in helping them build products, right? So a pretty exciting space, I would say. Ram is also the chairman of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, right? And he was also the president of Software Exporters Association of Pune. So Ram, before I go to the panelist, a really quick view from you on a lot of we can't have any discussion these days without bringing in the current unprecedented time that we are in, COVID situation. So what's your advice, a simple advice for people who are kind of maybe worrying a little bit about what situation they are in? So you need to unmute, Ram. You need to unmute.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So yeah, that worked. So can you repeat that again for me, please, Sai?
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely, Ram. So I was saying, we can't have any discussion these days without talking about the current unprecedented situation, COVID situation. And for those of the folks who are, kind of worrying, what's your advice on, should we, it's okay to worry, or, give us a little bit of advice for everyone on that aspect of it.
Yes, absolutely. So I believe that little bit of worrying is not bad, right? So worrying, let's not worry about worrying.
Yeah.
Right? So I think like we've seen with every challenges and issues in the past, even this will pass. So it sounds philosophical, but that's a fact of the matter. And I also believe in the strength of community thinking, collective innovation, and given the fact that this is a global issue, everybody across the globe are working together to address this problem. And they say that creativity and innovation works best when there is constraints and crisis. So because you are forced and you're compelled to get out of your comfort zone, there'll be a lot of creative solutions coming out of it. And I'm very confident that the world is going to be a better place.
Great. And I'm also sure that we try as best as possible to avoid information overload on COVID for some time at least. I think it's tempting to get into that, but possibly a good thing to not to spend too much time on that. Thanks, Ram. And I'll come back to you when we start getting into the discussion. I'd like to introduce Venkataraman. Hi, Venkat. You can wave your hand so that folks can put a name to face. Venkat is a Senior Vice President and Chief HR Officer for Candela Labs. Most of you might be familiar with Candela Labs. It's a fintech company. It offers automation services for insurers and banks. Pretty exciting space to be in these days. So Venkat, what's your quick advice on what should people and businesses do, simply put, in this current context? You also need to unmute. I'm sorry, I think looks, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'll not talk much about COVID. That's pretty short. I think these kind of situation will come, right? Every 2-3 years, there'll be something like this which will come. And this time it's a global issue. The scale is really worrying. Very simply, I'd say it's going to build some kind of a resilience to both people and business. And this will again fuel the next cycle of innovation. That's what I think so.
So you're saying the situations like this where both people and businesses will build more resilience so that we have better ways to deal with this, not just from an individual capacity, but from a systemic perspective as well.
Absolutely. 3-4 months, it's going to be there as an issue. I think 6 months down the line, there'll be obviously some kind of innovation which will kind of help us to manage such situations in the future.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to introduce now Varadharaju. Hi, Varda. If you can show your hand and wave so that, great, awesome. So Varda is head of HR and VP at 24/7 AI. I'm sure many of you have seen that company on Outer Ring Road in Bangalore with a big 24/7 logo on top of it. It's a customer experience company. I believe it has products around contact center technology using now machine learning and AI to even go to the extent of understanding customer intent, consumer intent, which is a very dangerous thing, I would say, but it's a fascinating area. I come from customer experience background myself, and the possibilities are enormous, right? So Varda is also a tech startup advisor, a coach, and a mentor. But interestingly, I think maybe you are the right person, Varda, to give us some more gyan on COVID and how it is affecting the behavioral patterns, because you are writing some series of articles on LinkedIn these days. Looks like either you want everybody to not panic and take it slow and get take a step back and get perspective. So what is prompting you to do the series of articles on LinkedIn on COVID and its effects on psychology and behavioral patterns?
Yeah, thanks, Sai, for your kind introduction. So I think it's a great question to really answer. See, it's once in a lifetime that we go through such situation, like maybe people are talking about 100 years back, such pandemic situation that really happened. So when we kind of get exposed to an unknown or an adversity, what typically happens is we react too much. When we react too much, Ram also said that we start to worry about the worry, and that's the biggest. So worrying about the worry is the biggest worry, and it's like a spiral, and it will take you down to a path, if you don't control it, to an anxiety and depression. So if you look at some of the words which are very, very new to the Indian context, social distancing, something we are social animals. Now we are talking about social distancing. Second is lockdown. We never heard of such of lockdown maybe for a century here. Then with all of this coming around, what really kind of getting impact, of course, organizations are moving into virtual kind of an environment, but it creates unnecessary panic among individuals if we don't handle it properly. Whichever that organization put measures in terms of communication, infrastructure, technology to improve the execution or productivity, unless until if the employee emotional well-being is not taken control, I don't think an individual can be at 100%.
So are you writing these series to help organization take stock of situation as to what you should consider now going forward with your
Exactly, that's the intent. In
Okay.
fact, I just published my the series 2 just a couple of hours
Excellent. Back. I think all of us can go and take a look at that. I just read series 1, and which fascinated me, hence that question. Thanks for being here, Vardha. And I'd now like to introduce Akhil. Akhil, you could go on, you could unmute yourself and say hi. Yep.
Hi
So
guys.
Akhil is a co-founder and CTO of Zolo. And I'm pretty sure many of you have heard of Zolo. And again, this is the same thing I used to constantly, it used to be visible, especially on the Outer Ring Road and Sarjapur Road in Bangalore. And initially, a few years ago, I used to wonder what this is. And it's become so popular now. For those of you who are still unfamiliar with it, it's a co-living platform and provides managed hostels, managed PGs, where people who are coming from different parts of the country can just find a really good, comfortable, quick accommodation and facilities that are required to just start, get started, right? So it's amazing how things have changed around, right? So for people who have moved from different cities, even 5 years ago or 10 years ago in the city, first 1 month went in hunting the right place to stay, and complaints from house owners saying that we don't want to give it to bachelors, and that's a common refrain from bachelors that say that I'm still taking time to find. Now when I meet people who are just joining the workforce, that's not even a question, right? They're saying that, oh yeah, day one I have Wi-Fi, I have clean living rooms, I have TV, I have everything that I need, and on day one. So thank you for doing that, Akhil. I think it's amazing how you transform your company, have transformed this. So any advice from you on how you are dealing, your company is dealing, not advice, I would say your perspective on how you're dealing with this situation?
So there are multiple factors involved. One of the key factors is the hygiene that we need to maintain at the properties, awareness among residents. So awareness is, I guess, already covered, but still kind of putting out some kind of best guidelines how to kind of function in a co-living setup. We moved a lot of people who were on a sharing basis to private rooms, and primarily, and we also deliver food to a good number of residents.
Wow.
So kind of providing those facilities, managing things through, and as such, I would say the government authorities have been quite supportive. There were issues in the beginning, in the first 1 or 2 days, when we didn't know how to get passes and all those things. There was some confusion, but things have been going pretty well. And
Okay.
we do get emails or thank you notes that, hey, providing lunch, so now we are providing lunch as well. So and yeah, so things are moving, but it has certainly hit our demand cycle. So generally, this cycle of May and June is the highest, is the peak season.
Yeah.
Where we really don't even have to market. Like we get customers, so many customers come to our website organically.
Because I guess that's when the companies start onboarding the new employees. June, July is the time frame, right?
A lot of interns, lot of new hires.
Yeah.
So the whole projection has changed. So we have revised our growth targets, and as of today, I guess we somewhere I would say we are managing the situation, but it's certainly a stressful situation for the company, and we really need to come out of it. The good part is that there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel, because once this is over, people would want to stay in professionally managed co-living spaces rather than local PGs. They would have that appetite to pay $1,000-$2,000 extra. And even from the supply perspective, where the building owners would also want to deal with the organized players. So it's not just for Zolo, it's also for Oyo Life, for Candela, for Oxford.
So I think the
will help everyone.
experience that you provide during these times is going to determine and change how these co-living spaces are going to be viewed after this, is what you're saying. That's amazing. So, and thanks for that. I think what you're doing, especially for people who are locked in those, managed PGs, it's very difficult unless you offer that help, and you're doing that. It's heartening to hear that. Excellent. So I think, the topic for today is future of hiring, and specifically around 3 trends, but looks like we have at least 4 people who can give 4 very different perspectives. So expect more than 3 insights and 3 viewpoints here. So let me go to Ram. Ram, from your point of view, if you were to look at the industry, especially the hiring patterns, or how that might change in the context of, let's say, products or data careers, what do you see emerging as a trend? I'm sure there are many, but if you can pick one that you believe is going to be interesting.
Yeah, thanks. First and foremost is that the need to find local talent, that ideology and that mentality is over. Right? But the fact that everybody is a remote worker today, it immediately means now you have access to a global workforce in a literal sense. Right? At the end of the day, it does not matter where my next product manager or my software engineer is going to come from. He could be coming from Russia, he could come from Aurangabad, or he can be any part of the world, right?
Yeah.
As long as he's equipped with the right tools and skills to able to provide the right outcome. So that opens immense possibilities for all of us, right? So we no longer need to be feeling constrained. Second, from a capability standpoint, at a very core basic level, I think it's very evident that everyone needs to be digital savvy. Whether it's an HR professional, whether it's an admin person, it's a software engineer, not just from a perspective of knowing how to leverage technology or digital for that matter, but also how to bring that in the products that we build, right? So whether it's a user experience or whether you're talking about feature functionality, but the ability to inherently think digital is going to be so important. Third is contextual thinking, right? Contextual thinking is going to be another very important ability that you're going to see required in any role, whether it is whether it's a corporate function or whether it is a technology role or product role. Ability to put context first, understand customer, understand business. Those are going to be very relevant. And last but not the least, in an environment moving forward, I think it's going to be very holacratic, in the sense that you're going to expect teams to be self-managed. So the ability to manage your own self, the ability to communicate well, manage your time well, solve your own problems, be very entrepreneurial in the way you approach work, are going to be some critical, parameters that I think we would be looking for in people.
Awesome. So I think you've outlined 4 areas that you see, but one thing that stands out, and I'll come back to you on the other ones, is what you mentioned is location agnostic hiring, right? That's the increasing trend that you believe is going to, which means people are going to be remote, people are going to be anywhere, and I don't need to necessarily ask them to come to the office location or workplace or headquarters or whatever it is, right? So I think it'll be good if you can get a quick poll from the audience around whether, how do they prefer remote working, how do they see remote working panning out, in not just in the context of COVID, but how would COVID also impact? So can we have that quick poll? There you go. I think we can see folks go ahead and take a few seconds to give your perspective on what do you think remote working will pan out to be, right? Now that's an astounding thumbs up for a steep rise. So it looks like most people are comfortable, for all that apprehensions that we had, both as an organization, as individuals. But of course, this poll doesn't say what they would prefer individually. They're just saying, here is a trend that we think is going to happen. That's good. So I think what I'd like to do now is to go to Venkat, right? And Venkat, if you can outline one or two trends that you're seeing, especially in hiring, best practices, or how they are emerging, right? There are different ones that are emerging, so that will be useful.
Sure. Thanks, Sai.
Sure.
See, one point is there'll be a rise in contractual jobs, which are purely assignment based, right? People will start looking at whether short-term or long-term assignment. That will be a new norm. So there's nothing that, always there's a full-time employment. At least most of the countries, they look at full-time employment is much better and the superior than contract job. That will fade away. There'll be good scope for SMEs and freelancers. It could be a solution consultant or a UX designer who will just come, build a solution and then move on like 1 year or so. And obviously from the HR front, the NDAs, the way they look at signing a contract is going to change, right? People will work for more than 2 companies or 3 companies. So that will give a different challenge to HR folks as well as when more.
Are you saying that this is more towards the gig workers, or is it, is it appropriate to phrase it that way?
Gig is also a common term to use, right? I mean, it's just not, see, there'll be a lot of scope for subject matter experts who will have independence to choose on their own, right? In terms of, they're just not going to be full-time employment with a company. They can just choose that I'll do something in the morning and I'll just work on a remote basis. There'll be more and more independence than sitting on to full-time employment and say, like, I'm going to work with this company for 10 years. That's something which will be...
And does this have to do anything with the emerging demographics around, especially we had a very interesting discussion yesterday about Gen Zs, right? Which is folks who are digital natives, are comfortable with, technology devices everywhere, and all they need is access to communication technology and devices, and I can work from anywhere, especially in the context of knowledge work. Yeah.
Absolutely. Geographical borders will fade away. People can work from anywhere. I think times are a real example, right? I mean, people can just take up except for a few jobs.
Yeah.
That's going to be on the rise. And the other trend, see, there's a famous saying, skills are global currency in the employment market. Yes, skills are global currency. I think we should remember that shelf life for skills are getting shorter and shorter. 5 years, 6 years, people used to have one skill and they can, work around and just take up an employment or whatever. So here we're talking about maximum 1 or 2 years, not beyond that. That's the rate at which technology is growing. So companies will start looking at, hiring people with greater learning agility, just not skill. So hence the hiring methodology will change. They look at people who will come and solve real-time problems in front of you, instead looking at how many years of experience, what your skill set. Typically in the HR world, we say, look at potential and agility, not performance. That's going to be more and more.
So from a person who is aspiring to get to different roles and jobs, the single message I think from you was that constantly upskill and reskill. It's not just acquiring new skill, but the pace at which you acquire them and learn different ones, right? So one is the agility, the other one is constant need to reskill oneself, right? And that's going to be a very important aspect of it. Excellent. And we'll come back and peel that a little more. Akhil, your perspective, or not perspective, I think, what do you see really now, trends, especially now that you are in CTO, you are a co-founder, you are hiring lots of product folks, engineering folks into these roles, and how is that changing or potentially changing in the next couple of years?
Got it. So one thing I would say is that we've kept the team quite lean for a long period of time, and we plan to do the same. Rather, it's becoming leaner and more leaner over time. And the number of positions or the number of people required to do a certain job is certainly reducing. Whether it's managing infrastructure because of AWS, GCP, whether it's building an application where the frameworks have kind of evolved enough where 2-3 guys can build a very strong application. 5 guys can, like, we are working in pods, we're working in then tribes where it's a team of just 4 to 5 people who are executing the whole project, right? So certainly, I would say, like, and given that we have been very thoughtful on whom we are getting in, and I believe that the interview process will exceed. Maybe the time spent on interviewing will remain the same. The number of hires might reduce, but the interview process will expand, where people are being very cautious of who's getting into the team. How do we kind of figure out this? First of all, is this person right from a skill set point of view, then the working style, then the work ethics. So there are various other parameters which we will start interviewing. Right. I believe that the remote hiring trend should and will increase.
In what way? In what way do you see remote hiring will change?
So, for example, especially in startups case or in our case, if someone is not from Bangalore, it used to be like that person or that candidate goes into a lower priority, that okay, the coordination for interviewing is going to be tough. It's not just the candidate side. There is a interviewer side as well. So there is generally you can call it inertia or some kind of challenge from TA side, from HR side, from interviewer side, which is reducing. I just checked out some of the panelists are sitting in Pune. It didn't even come to me, right? So that we are sitting in different cities right now. So that barrier has certainly has been challenged. And most of the guys have actually, or with the technology, with the internet speed and connection we have, I have not faced any internet issues since lockdown. Right?
So these things. Right. To kind of, I think, paraphrase the two main things that you're bringing up is one, the type of jobs that people used to do are changing and may not require as many people as we used to, which means there's going to be increased focus and investment on accelerating automation, if that is the right way to look at it. Now, that doesn't mean that people should be worried or scared about it, which means that it's an opportunity to everyone to start looking at what is the next thing that I can do that automation is not yet there, right? So the type of work that we should look at that humans can do. The other thing you brought up very interesting is you're saying that it is not clear whether we are hiring somebody, whether they can do that job or not. Now, how can we de-risk that part? I mean, is there a pattern that you're seeing before onboarding that person full-time into a company? Is there something going on?
So we have done this from a long time, since the inception of the company itself. We were a very small team earlier, where if we roll out an offer, so we used to ask the person to come on Saturdays or take leave from his office and work with us. We call it working days. Where we have not enrolled the person. We have not even, sometimes we would have rolled out an offer letter. Sometimes we would have said that, hey, let's decide the offer letter afterwards. It's an opportunity for us to evaluate you better, and opportunity for the candidate to understand the culture of the team and culture of the company. Right. So, and especially whoever we are hiring in product, once they cross 4 to 5 years of experience, certainly their priority is very much into how's the culture of the company, how's the culture of the team over any other thing. Over package value, it comes up.
This is really fascinating. I'm sure I want to get perspective on this from the other HR folks here, whether that is acceptable even in their companies. What you're saying is, Akhil, let's try this person before hiring from your perspective. And from a candidate's perspective, also, it's a great way to say, is this a right place for me to work, right? Let me try it out before committing myself to an organization. And I personally believe that this is going to be a trend too. But let me ask other panelists, are you going to say absolutely no? or no, it's going to change? So anyone?
Yeah.
It, it depends on the business sector we are in, right? Are some businesses where it's been driven by your data security confidentiality agreement. It is important that we honor them.
Yeah.
And therefore, unless until there is a commit from the candidate on board, you can't really expose.
Yeah.
Wherever there is a possibility where you don't have such glitches, I think we should be open enough in exploring this new way of working. For example, what we really do is we have a user research lab in our organization. When we really interview the candidate, they come and present their portfolios, what they've really done in the past. It's a day-long presentation. They really talk about the design, how it's going to really impact, and then it becomes very conversational. You again give them a case study, case study, not a very hypothetical. So really come back and then present. So what this gives is the experience. Yeah. So what are we trying to really do is experience that we are really sharing, both for the candidate and also for the organization. Then we kind of it's marriage, right? Yeah. You try to kind of tie the knot and then really move on. Not all marriage goes for the longest period of the time. Yeah. It depends on how the culture that we really kind of take over. So all of this. So the answer is yes and no.
No, I think you brought a very, very important point. But before I get to that, Vardha, I think could take a really quick poll in the context of what you're saying. I think what you're saying is, it is time that we actually ask people to show what problems they can solve or how they can solve, as opposed to saying, I have solved this before. And hence you have to trust me and believe me that I'm going to solve it for you, which is a very traditional way and continued hiring practice using the resume, because resume is nothing but a reflection of what you did in the past and not necessarily what you can, how you can bring those skills. So I want to take a moment to just ask for a poll around this part, right? So a lot of folks that we talk to say, look, my resume is impressive. I think, I've spent 20 years, 15 years doing this, and I'm trying to get to this new role, and I'm not hearing back. So I think let's see what people hear from this poll. If we could launch the poll around, what is the importance that folks are giving towards the resume. Is a poll coming up? Okay, we'll continue the discussion as it comes up. But going back to what you're saying, Vardha, is both. It's going to be yes, the approach that Akhil outlined, and I think I'm sure he got this idea from running Zolo itself, not necessarily hiring people. That you try this before you feel comfortable about it, and you're saying that. This applies obviously for certain sectors and certain things it may not, which is absolutely fair. But more and more increasingly, it is going to be that folks are going to try, looking from a demonstration of what you bring to the table. Give a problem, give a challenge, give 24 hours, give 48 hours. And I think, what I'm also seeing is the industry seems to call this as a fancy word. Well, not a fancy word. It's been in use in other industries, like job auditions, as we call them, right? If you're hiring, or rather an actor who wants a job in a movie, I mean, auditions has been going on forever, right? Which is basically coming and showcasing a single emotion or whatever it is. Now, in the professional, in our context, in products and data, ability to come and demonstrate, here is how I can show market analysis for your product in that country, or here is how I think you should position this product in this particular marketplace or segment. And not just saying that I know pricing, I know market sizing, I know market analysis, but taking a practical example is going to be. Tell me if I am over-interpreting this, Vardha, but this is what I'm gathering from what you're on mute, by the way, in case you wanted to talk, right? So, excellent. So let me go back to Ram. Ram, in terms of, you mentioned the remote working. Can you more elaborate on the two kinds of remote workers that we are seeing? I think we also touched upon this, which is people who are tied to a company, have a contract, an employee contract, and can now work from anywhere else. But people who are also without tied to a company, which is a gig economy that we talked about. So is that going to be in favor for in the context of product companies and data companies, or you don't see that happening anytime soon?
I think a combination of both. It depends a lot on the role for which you're hiring. Some roles you expect the person to be fully, in the zone, focused on what you're building, because product engineering is a fairly complex activity, as you all know, right? And you need to have some dedicated mind space and time that you can spend on it, right? However, there could be some roles that which you can afford to, just have a person just in time. They come in, they just do the job, and then they leave, right? It could be, let's say, I need an opinion on my user experience.
Yeah.
Right? Go to a specialist and I get an input from him. So I think it's going to be very contextual to the nature of work and also the role that I spoke about.
No, so that's very relevant, actually, bringing back to what you're doing. So Akhil, do you see, so especially, there are some areas in the area of products, right, product management, where you keep hearing these days about AI product management. Now, it's a very heavily overloaded phrase, right? But still, that title and that role is becoming increasingly popular, right? So, my interpretation of that is basically now products are collecting enormous amount of data, right? For example, I'm sure your Zolo app or any other apps that we are using are collecting lots of information about the users, about the usage, about the, so that in order to improve the experience of it, right? Now, but that also means that the traditional product managers who come with user research, asking questions, customer discovery, empathy, and all of that, while still are useful, there are new skills now coming up with, which are becoming important, which I call them as, niche skills. Is that a fad, you think, or is that something that you're going to see increasing regularly? I mean, exponentially.
So it's certainly going to increase. Now, from a product guy, the expectation is that the person is actually continuously improving his skills. Like, one thing which I would like to mention is that when we are hiring, we are certainly looking for, other than academic excellence, that in the recent years, in last 2-3 years, what are the types of problems that guy has solved? If the guy is, let's say, if the candidate himself is saying that, hey, my job is not challenging for last 2 years or so, and I want to join you. So then we certainly look for that. What is it that you have done to enhance your skill? To either you have done a MOOC course, or you have done some kind of online degree, or you've done a certain course, right? And that's the growth mindset is the base expectation from a product person. If your fundamentals are right, if you are expert at user research, on understanding the customer, then we don't see an issue in complementing the person with a data guy. But if your fundamentals are right, and if you are working towards improving your skills, then even you will, the assumption is that you will also enhance.
No, I mean, then there is no question of there's no question of talking about niche skills if the fundamental aspects of methods, approaches, and skills of understanding what market problems to solve, even, right? And so I think, again, an interesting point to take a quick check to see from the audience to, again, a quick poll on, applying, let's say, machine learning or AI techniques to a product in the context of making decisions around a product. Is that going to be increasing in trend, or is that, hey, people, it's a buzzword, they're just talking about it, it'll fade away, just like many things have faded away before, right? So it looks like an overwhelming majority are saying that no, absolutely not. we need those machine learning and AI skills. So, which is a good thing. I think, which also goes back to your point, Vardha, around having jobs that are of high value, creating jobs that are of high value, where humans can do more, where automation and other techniques can take care of a lot of things that humans are doing today, right? So would you agree with what our audience are saying in that context? You're on mute, by the way. Vardha, yes.
I think these are some very, very important trends that we should really observe. Let me give I think Akhil gave a great example. Let me kind of give HR tinge to it. What could be the future role of HR can really evolve with the current change of scenarios? I'm just foreseeing that we might probably club hiring somebody with a psychology background with the data sciences. What it really means is a psychologist would really understand the human behavior by having a good understanding of the models. Your data scientist model can actually draw predictions of your human behavior, because these are uncertain times. So it's important that you really understand your customer's intent. It's not just your customer intents in the business, but also within the organization. And therefore, HR can actually draw a very meaningful engagement that has a real impact on productivity, real impact on the top and bottom line. So I really second the thought process.
So I think you are addressing some of the questions that I'm seeing coming through the audience, and I'll get to that in a minute. Before that, Ram, you mentioned ability to self-manage and being able to communicate clearly, not just to your peers, but also to your stakeholders. So what you're referring to is a set of soft skills that one needs to master, right? Or at least is going to be very important going forward. Could you elaborate a few on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So two different contexts here. One is if you're going to be building a product, and what Akhil mentioned earlier, that you need to understand user perspectives, customer perspectives. So when you need to do that, you have to get into the skin of how their behavior is going to be, right? Whether you are an engineer, whether you're a data scientist, or you're working on the front end piece, that comprehension is very, very critical, right? At the end of the day, if you're building a motor, you need to know whether it's going to go into a truck or it's going to go into a ship. Without the broader context of how your pieces of the product is going to operate, you can't really do a good job of building the whole ship, right? So the softer skills as a result becomes so critical. And those also includes your ability to empathize with the users or the consumers or stakeholders in a very meaningful way, right? So that is one perspective. The other perspective is that if it's going to be a very distributed team, you're going to work remotely, and you don't have the clue as to whatever piece you're building is how it's going to fit into the whole, the whole product. Then it's going to be like the blind man and the elephant. So having a good soft skill, like I mentioned earlier, understanding the business context and user context, how things eventually work. Unless you have that presence of mind and the ability to articulate it, and comprehension is a very important aspect of articulation in a way. So without that, I don't think just pure engineering skills or any unique skills that people bring to the table is going to suffice anymore. And the last point here is more and more products are going to be very digitally enabled, right? Whether it's an e-commerce solution or a solution like Zolo. So if those products are not intuitive, if they're not intelligent, it's not going to be usable. And in today's time and age, we all have very little patience. And if the product is not usable, you just stop using it. As simple as that. So, and the only way you can make a product usable is to bring that empathy into it. So soft skills are going to be incredibly important one way or the other.
So which essentially also means that we should give serious importance, if not more importance, to the soft skills that you mentioned, including being able to empathize, being able to communicate, being able to even specific leadership skills, right? How do you influence your team, where, especially in the context of product and product roles, where nobody reports to a product manager most of the time, right? And in that context, how do you do that? So these becomes even more important in going forward. Is if that is the takeaway from the message that you're giving.
Otherwise, building a product can be a very frustrating experience.
Indeed. Yeah. So I want to just pick few questions. There are lots of questions, by the way. Thank you all for asking many of them. We seem to be creating a record today between the days in the number of questions. So I'll randomly read some names just to acknowledge folks. Utkarsh, Hari Prakash, Nitesh Mehra, Rahul Roy, all of you. But here's an interesting question that I want to pose to the panel, right? What are the best practices a mid-level professional should follow to shift from one domain where he works and get hired into another one? Are there any best practices to say, if I want to move from one industry to another, where maybe you spend 5, 6, 7 years in that and get to that? What is a good approach, if you can articulate? So I would say, how about Venkat, if you don't mind, if you can take that.
Sure. It's going to be industry to industry, or one function to the function. When you're a software engineer or a product engineer, if you want to go to business development or product strategy or sales, that's something which is relatively easy, because you can be a fresher to that new function. You can do some pseudo projects with the support of the organization, whether internally, externally.
Yeah, I think this was mainly for the mid-level professionals moving across industry. As you said, could be within the function or across the function.
Industry to industry, that could be a challenge, depending upon what skills the person has got. It cannot be a completely new industry. Mindset should be, he's a fresher for the industry, should take up some mentors, start observing 2-3 years. It takes to move on. It's not, I wouldn't say it's not possible. It will be a little challenging. But it's a very open question, like from which industry to which industry. We do not, if you say petrochemical.
So let's say banking and financial industry to an e-commerce. I mean, I'm just hypothetical.
So that's a good example, right? Yeah. So banking to e-commerce, you did a lot of techno-functional consultants, domain consultants, or whatever you call, in the e-commerce industry. So you can start as a business consultant. You bring in a lot of expertise and then slowly learn technology. Your transition becomes easier. It takes about 2-3 years, and we are seeing that a lot of examples. Even in my company, we hire functional consultants who are not tech savvy, but in a couple of years they become techno-functional.
Okay. No, so that's thanks for that. I think we are slowly getting to the top of the hour. So quickly we can go around and get to closing remarks. We could start with Ram. Again, re-emphasizing that let's pick one trend that you are going to bet now your career on, if you will. Right? Just pick one each, and then I'm sure that's gonna require some thinking, I suppose, but it's gonna benefit everyone. So what's one trend that you believe we all should be prepared for and be ready to make the best use of it?
Yeah, so I would say digital and automation. So anything that is manual will get automated, and everything will work on a digital platform. That's going to be the new world.
Awesome. Excellent. Crisp and to the point. Awesome. Akhil, what about you?
I would say the continuous skill enhancement. Like in a resume, I'm just looking for your last 3 years or last 2 years. So continuous skill enhancement.
Continuous skill and continuously upskill and reskill. Look for things that you can learn new. And it could be technical skills, it could be product skills, it could be leadership skills, or any of those, but probably all of those. Probably all of those.
Yeah. Even soft skills. Yeah. Somewhere you're learning where you kind of introspected and figured out that, okay, this is something which I should grow myself into.
Excellent. All right. Vardha, one last thing that you would bet your career on.
I would just say that it's just chase your dreams, And then the famous quote, right? Where skills cannot take, will take. So
more willpower.
Yeah, will, and the more importantly, like the strongly you deep rooted, whatever situations, scenarios are in front of you, you will not resist, but you will go through the process, but still be quite successful and happy. So one need to kind of imbibe those cultural element over a period of time as we started to run behind this materialistic world. We all know how to kind of earn money, but probably we just forgotten how to kind of be happy.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you so much. Venkat, one last words from you, some wisdom.
Be curious. Of course, everyone spoke about upskilling. I think we should do upskilling based on self-assessment, just not go randomly beyond, behind skills, which are very popular. I see a lot of people who I counsel. I'm learning Python. I'm learning data science. I mean, probably a mechanical engineer. I mean, you need to look at what is that your self-assessment is, and then do a upskilling initiative should be aligned with your self-assessment, and be curious to learn new things that will keep you going.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been very informative from all of you. But before you go away, there is a very interesting question that gets the best award today. Anand Rangarajan, we don't want you to answer this, but it's a fascinating question. I think food for thought for many people who are actually managers in your companies. What will be the role of a manager and or a HR when people are allowed to work from home? Will there be more micromanagement happening, or will there be a community that will create better collaboration and better bonding between the folks? So I think that's really something that strikes a chord, or actually thought provoking in this time. So with that, I will want to thank all of you again. And before we just move away, let me just show a couple of things, 2 minutes. And then we'll move that. So I request all the panelists to answer some of the questions that you can on this LinkedIn thread. I'm sure you are already tagged on it, so you'll be getting notification. There are some really fascinating questions that we couldn't take due to lack of time. But the purpose of this is to continue the conversation, right? Not just stop, have a discussion and go on with our lives. So keep that going, and thank you again for doing this. So let me just, and I've announced the best question award. Anand Raghavan, you will be getting your award soon, pretty soon. And I want to see, go and see where the leaderboard is today, right? So leaderboard is just a simple page where there are a few actions that you can take, and there is the leaderboard. So Mish Vikas has the highest number of points. So he or she would get an exclusive 30-minute career counseling with a senior industry executive. Congratulations. And again, thank you all. Over to you, Sonal. But before that, feel free to bring up the feedback poll so that the audience can just quickly give the session feedback to all of us. And thanks again, folks. See you another time.
Thank you, Sai. Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone. We'll be starting in 10 minutes with our next session. Do take a feedback on your screen now.
Yeah, don't miss out the next session. Is a very interesting one, especially around digital product management and how it is different, in 5 ways, actually many ways, but we've asked Nishant to distill this into 5 ways it is different. So stick around, take a break though, 5 minutes, and then we'll join back. Thank you.
Thanks, Sai. Thanks, IPL, for organizing this.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Day 3 of Product Leadership Festival 2020. Before we get started with our second session of the evening, let me welcome the host of the evening, Mr. Sai Satish Vedam. Sai is a senior faculty and an executive coach at Institute of Product Leadership. He was most recently the Director of Product Management at Oracle. Welcome, Sai.
Thank you, Sonal. Again, welcome all for the second session today. We had an amazing first one, very interactive discussion around, future of hiring trends. Now we'll get into even more exciting area of digital products. So let me start sharing my screen. And before we get into the discussion, I'd like to go over a few things just for the folks who are joining this session, not join the previous one, but this one. So just to give some context around the Product Leadership Festival, what it is, and a few, operational aspects, a few exciting things, I would say. So Nishant, if you could wait for a couple of minutes, we'll get to you in a minute. Thanks for joining us. So Product Leadership Festival is a 5-day festival. We are at day 3, centered around career insights in product, data, and design, conducted by Institute of Product Leadership. For those of you who are not familiar with IPL, as it is called, this is a different IPL than what you might be thinking or used to. IPL, started in 2012, offer basically as an India's first B school for technology managers, helping them to move into or make a career transformation into product leadership. And IPL partners with various universities across and designs and delivers programs that help senior working professionals move into product leadership roles. So, there are lots of alumni who have gone through 2000 plus, and IPL is, and the participants have created a very strong alumni, right? So in the context of that, on May 2nd, there is an open conference day, which is while the first 4 days we have fantastic speakers, C-level executives from various companies providing us these insights. On day 5, which is on May 2nd, we have lots of folks like you who have nominated a topic and volunteered to speak. I think it's a great platform to communicate, to express your ideas and points of view in the context of product, data, and design. So if you have not done that, this is also a time to go ahead and do it. Scan that QR code, and it takes you to a web page, submit a topic. And for the others, there's a voting system. It's called an unconference. You can go look at the topics, cast your vote. You can cast more than one vote. And, if the speaker that you voted for wins, you get to win some amazing prizes. So go ahead and do that. The links for this web pages will also be posted on the chat Q&A of Zoom. So if you're unable to scan the QR code, go ahead and do that. There's another interesting game that you could play here. Scan the QR code. It takes you to what you call as a leaderboard. And leaderboard is essentially, it has 3 steps, simple steps for you to do. And when you do that, every step gets you some points, and you'll be ranked on the leaderboard. And whoever gets on top of that will get an exclusive one-on-one 30-minute discussion with a senior executive, senior leader in the industry, with a career guidance and career path discussion, right? So it's an incredible opportunity. Don't miss out on that. Many people really work hard and takes months to get to this opportunity. So, I'm glad that some of the senior executives have agreed to do this for IPL. So go ahead and take advantage of that. So in a minute, I'll introduce Nishant, but before we get there, again, scan the code and it'll take you to the specific LinkedIn thread for this topic, right? If you have used this in the previous one, that was for that discussion, for that topic, and those questions there. Feel free to go and ask the questions here in this thread instead of the Zoom chat, because it can get lost in the lots of barrage of questions, more, some of them random questions coming through. So, and I will be monitoring the thread, as well as the team behind is also looking at the questions that are coming in. And the best question asked on that thread will get an award, right? So we have a question award for best question, as well as the leaderboard actions that you can take. So with that, I'd like to introduce Nishant. Nishant, if you can see, yeah, thank you. You can turn off the video and say hi, and you're also on mute.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Am I still on mute? No.
No, so you are now audible. Thank you, Nishant. So Nishant is a very, has a pretty interesting profile. It's very hard to find a chief product officer and a design officer rolled into one. So we have a rock star here who is a CPO and a CDO, design officer of BookMyShow, which is of course not, in fact, it's a household name in this country and presumably outside as well. Before BookMyShow, Nishant was at ClearTrip and Intuit, worked in product management roles. But Nishant, the question that I have first, before we get into the topic, is, and I've been using BookMyShow for many years now. I believe it's been around in this country for about more than a decade, right? And I'm sure more than that. But I've been using it for several years now. Now, when I thought about this, BookMyShow has always been focusing on getting people out to do something, right? Get out of your house, go see a movie, go watch a concert, go to a stand-up comedy, go join that pub event that's happening, and all of that, right? And all towards bringing in events, making it easy for people to go and join. Now, in the current context, how are you creating value? Because nobody can go anywhere.
That's a good question, and thank you for your kind introduction.
Sure.
Up until COVID hit us, our tagline was, we do everything for out-of-home entertainment. That was how we defined our company.
Yeah.
And we have had a massive pivot, as you can imagine, to drop the outside home. So we actually invested in. Well, let me take a minute to give a little background about BookMyShow.
Sure. Yeah.
BookMyShow as a company does not only do ticketing. We are actually reverse integrated into the entire supply chain, into the entire value chain. We provide ERP systems, inventory management systems to the movie houses. We provide, as we evolved into live events, we started providing ground services. So for IPL and this year in Singapore, for Formula One, we will provide on-ground services. So accreditation, RFIDs based, access to different parts of the venue, turnstiles. So we have food and beverage, actually creating venues, actually sponsoring IPs. So when you two came in here, we actually sponsored the entire production. So we are diversified, although BookMyShow is just one brand that everyone knows. We are in several other businesses.
That's I think is revealing to a lot of people here, at least to me, because most of it, what we see is the consumer side of thing and what we can use. But it's fascinating that you are deeply integrated into the value chain all the way, up to that. Go ahead. Sorry.
So what we did is we looked at our strengths. BookMyShow pretty much built this industry. Online ticketing in 99, when this started, booking online tickets was illegal. There were specific laws against it.
Yeah.
Our founders went ahead and worked with regulators, built the industry from scratch. In the process, what happened is we have wonderful relationships, and we were able to. We own artist management agencies. So what we were able to do is feel the pain of the artists who are also not getting their butter right now, and provide at-home entertainment. So now I think it was in the second week after actually the first week itself, we had live from HQ, and the first one was the Kuhad, I forget the first name, Pradeep Kuhad. But we were able to get artists completely locked down in their home to start broadcasting. Prateek Kuhad, thank you, to start broadcasting from their house to yours, right? And then we built several IPs along it. Now we have a full-blown, and this is complete, hats off to the BookMyShow engineering and product and design teams. We have a full-blown live streaming solution. We are entering into providing lesser known movies also to be streamed through BookMyShow. An interesting trivia, India produces about 4,000 feature films every year. Only about 1,500 get a theatrical release. The 2,500 movies never get to see a theater.
Yeah.
Not all of them are really bad, but there are so many reasons why they can't go on. We are providing a platform now to get those movies to the right users.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
In many, many ways, just to keep providing that entertainment to users.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I think, by asking these questions is when we get to know more first-hand perspective of what we see as a simple app on the phone. We take it for granted. And this is where I want to get into asking you and understanding from you. When you think about a digital product, right, what comes to mind? Because many of us may have a different understanding of digital products. To my kid, possibly the plasma television is a digital product, right? But in our context, how do you define what is more and not a digital product, if you will?
Yeah, so I think the easier answer is to say anything that's physical is not digital. So a brick is not digital, although there will be a time when there will be hybrid bricks, which will give out all sorts of information to your house. Yeah. But in my definition, there are three types of products. There are pure digital products. An app running on your phone is a pure digital product.
Yeah.
Then there are hybrid products, which is most of your electronics, which have a lot of digital overlaid in them, but there's also a bunch of hardware that it runs on. But it's connected. It's got it's got wiring. It's got something going on in it. And then there are purely hardware products, or physical products, a house, a rock. That's art, canvases. That's pure physical products.
Yeah, but if you ask, I'm not trying to contradict you, but a physical product which includes digital elements, is that also you would, in general, it's called a digital, but not in our context necessarily. But how would you look at that? As I said, an iPad today.
Yeah, so to me, the apps that run on an iPad are pure digital. An iPad is an electronic device. It's not truly a digital product. We are living in a world of devices that talk to each other all the time. All of the IoT, all of that would be, in my mind, electronic devices, but they're not purely digital products. To me, a consumer-facing, internet-connected, that's purely digital. I have a bias towards B2C. You would argue that ERPs are also digital products, but that's stretching it. They become enterprise class digital products. There are several ways to
I think there are two different constituents and trying to attribute. One, as you said, digital products is typically internet consumer products, and the other enterprise folks would love to call it as B2B SaaS products, right? So which is also digital, but somehow there is this categorization that is happening. But for our discussion, because you come from the background of ClearTrip and even now more recently make my BookMyShow, I think we could orient our conversation in that context, if you will. Now before we get into this discussion, right, I think where we're going to talk more about products, design, and how they influence and how are they different, I think it's worth taking a quick poll from the audience about what does the current audience look like in terms of their current roles in their work, right? So if we can bring that poll, we'll see what role do they play currently. I'm sure we couldn't expand into many roles, but at least the ones that we're going to focus on right now. That's well, actually, I'm pretty interested and impressed that we have about more than 10% of entrepreneurs here, which is fascinating, and I think a welcome. sign, I would say.
And I'm imagining the 40% that are in the other category are aspiring to be one of the three, either product managers, designers, or entrepreneurs. That's a safe assumption to go with.
Possibly, yeah. Now, so let's get into when we say this digital product, and in the context, we're talking about internet consumer product. Can you talk a little bit about what are the characteristics that you see, or even a product manager should start thinking when we say digital consumer product? Because it's easy to say it's a mobile app. Let's build an app. But knowing what BookMyShow is all about, it is a whole value chain, right? So in that context, can you outline a few things how they are different from the other products?
Absolutely, Sai. I have outlined 5 things to be precise.
Awesome. Yeah.
I do want to preface, though, that there are certain things that are going to be common across products. If you're developing a vaccine, or if you're developing a new Tesla car, you're always going to be consumer focused, right? So you're always going to be user backed. You're always going to do certain things. You'll always have a business model in mind. You're always going to do a certain amount of user research, usability. All of that is always going to be there. So that's, if you will, a horizontal across all products, and has been since time immemorial, since whenever products have been made.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the nuance differences that define that every product manager and designer for digital products should keep in mind. That are specific and to digital products, and that are not as relevant to other products. So, as we go through these 5, I will call out some of the stark differences between the two. So
Absolutely.
the first one that comes to my mind is that all digital products are almost always connected. They are never standalone. There was a time when you would have software which was could be called digital products, but that was dumb, that used to just sit on a device and only run there. But now that boundary has almost completely been obliterated. Either it's to get updates, or it's to provide feedback data or logging data. Some way or the other, every digital product is connected. And thinking about use cases. So now I'm talking about what a product manager should be careful about, or what a designer should think about when designing a digital product in the context of being connected, is that use cases are not limited to just what are the sunny scenarios that you're building for. It's because it's going to be connected. There are going to be outliers, whether it's a poor Wi-Fi, no internet connection, viruses.
Could you give an example to illustrate that point, just to bring in clarity around? I think you started talking about Wi-Fi, but what aspect of that should the product manager consider? For example, a simple use case or so.
Right. So because you're going to be connected, I mean, there are several examples. Let me just talk about a few, right?
Yeah.
Everyone started thinking about data. But are you truly, I mean, there are very few products that are truly safeguarding the data of the user, because the product is always going to be connected and the data is going back and forth. Now, so many apps have screwed up on that, that now regulations are forcing it down on us, right? GDPR, and I'm sure India is going to come up with something soon.
Our own version of it,
Yeah. So as a product manager, and especially as a product manager that's thinking ahead, when you're defining your V1, when you're defining your MVP, thinking about how data will be managed, how will a user have access to his or her data, how will user be able to delete it, prevent it from being shared beyond a certain category. Those use cases often don't come in the initial thinking of a product manager or a designer. And that's a clear example of what people should be thinking about now. This is not superficial. This is not something that will happen eventually. It has to happen at V1. It has to happen at MVP.
Yeah. No, because that's so integral to the value that you're creating. If you're saying that, don't make it as an afterthought.
Yes.
It has to be, people used to say, and we still say, security is not an afterthought, But now the elements that you're outlining for digital products have to be baked in right from the beginning, right from inception, and even understanding the problem, solving the problem's point of view.
And it goes on. Maybe I'll just talk about a second example as well.
Yeah.
Product managers and designers often think about their primary use cases.
Mm-hmm.
My product is to book a ticket. Therefore, I will think about all the ways that a user wants to book a ticket and make a payment and get the confirmation. But because of the connected nature of products, there is so much more that happens. There are secondary and tertiary use cases. I will book a movie, but I will also want to share it. And then somebody will comment on the fact that I shared it. Am I thinking about how my product is looking when in the secondary use case it's being discussed on Facebook or on some social media, or in the tertiary use case, it's being used to commit a crime or a fraud?
Yeah,
you have to think about
that's a great experience.
The data that's going out from my product and how are other products engaging with mine. And that's not straightforward, but thinking about it is essential for designers as well as product managers.
So while we say that you should do this, you should take this approach, and it's important to think, are there any tips or are there any specific areas one needs to learn or acquire from a skill perspective? Or is it most about the mindset here rather than any specific considerations on skills?
No, it's both. It's yes, we don't have time to go into details of all of it. But there are tools, and in the past there used to be a Microsoft tool called threat modeling. I think it's a product now that a lot of companies use. Using a threat
Sleepy.
Okay,
fresh up. Go brush your teeth.
Can you guys
bring water?
Folks, can you mute everybody else who's not a co-host? Sorry about that, Nishant.
No worries. Brushing is important.
Yeah, I hope the person is listening. Yeah, go ahead.
So using, you can devise your own tools, right? What is the data that's going out? The security levels, the privacy levels, the impact on the ecosystem in which your app is going to work. So the connected nature of the app, I want to, or digital product. So thinking about that and thinking, just doing a little brainstorming exercise with other fellow product managers and designers on how is it going to go beyond the primary use cases. Because a product manager will list down the 15 main stories, the 3 more main epics, and they get so focused on going live with that and not thinking about outside. You don't have to kill yourself over it, but having a few intellectual meetings that think about it will get you a better sense about the product. You go through secondary research.
So let me ask you this: what's the stuff that's behind you? Are those epics and stories, or is that as a designer now you mapped out a user journey? You can see lots of post-its behind.
Yeah,
that,
I guess.
Right? Good. So in the connected, so one important aspect, characteristic of a digital product is that it's connected. So there are considerations there. Are there any design considerations to think about, especially for the designers in the audience, and you bringing that perspective as well would be useful?
Yeah. So how will your product look? So let me give a simple example, right? Almost all digital products have some ability to share.
Yeah.
It on a mobile phone, it will invoke all the apps that you have through which you can share, whether it's AirDrop or WhatsApp or whatever. How many designers actually think about what the experience is once the user receives it on that platform? If I share it with Telegram, what will my product look like when it is shared on Telegram? So this is again thinking it beyond the primary use case. What will the logo look like? What will be the font? Can it even be enforced? Can I use an image so that my font and my brand guidelines are actually getting enforced? What is the call to action over there? Will there be a reverse linking? So think for designers to actually really embody those journeys and understand every step of the way in the secondary and tertiary use cases, that would be very important.
That's a brilliant example. I think, many people may pay attention to how can I make the sharing part intuitive, which, by the way, we don't need to do that. Most of the platforms themselves are making that possible. But then how does it look like on the other side when you have shared is a very important design consideration. Just an example of that. Awesome. So can we talk about the second ways that digital product is different?
Yeah, so, what I loosely call is digital products are almost infinitely personalizable, right? Sometimes frustratingly personalizable. There's too many options. So in the good old days, when you bought a belt, you bought a belt. If you became, if your waistline expanded too much, there was a point after which your belt will not fit.
Good opportunity to buy a new one. Yeah.
Yes. But you don't have, at least in the past, didn't have belts that could automatically expand and contract your waistline. I mean, your products, physical products, have a very small ability to get personalized. And once they are personalized, when you go and buy a tailored suit, it's it, that's done. It doesn't suddenly change to adapt to your body. When a lady buys a dress, it's a dress that size. If she becomes pregnant in 9 months, the dress is not going to suddenly get personalized for you. But digital products are very different. We have so many tool sets, and with the havoc that AI and ML is throwing on, the power that it's putting in the hands of PMs and designers is having a pretty bad impact, if not really thought through, on the end user, because things are constantly getting personalized. So the point is, you have the power as a product manager and designer to work with your data scientists and your data engineers to completely push personalization. So digital products can be personalized and should be personalized, but a product manager needs to be careful in defining the level of personalization. Just because something can be personalized doesn't mean that it needs to be personalized. Again, back to basics. You have to be customer backed. What level of personalization do I really need? I mean, if you're only going to show me the news feed that I'm totally only ever interested in, how will I ever know what's going on in other people's minds and in the world? So finding that mix between personalizing it to making it easy for me versus making it so personalized that it's isolating.
So it's a very tricky balance is what he's saying. And you need to be cognizant of not going overboard. That's creating, hyper personalization, I believe some people call it, versus not giving enough control to the user. Now, so if you look at the typical way how product managers would think about this, there are multiple options, right? One is you do user research. You understand the behaviors of the users and segment them or profile them into different personas and say, these are the set of people that we could go ahead and provide more control. And so one is on the customer research, understanding customer insights and everything. The other thing is, we call this typically hippo view, right, which is highest paid person's opinion in the room. Now, what I'd like to understand in these parts is from our audience to see when they are part of building these products, especially in product management roles. I'd like a poll to come up to say, where do they spend most of their time in what type of activities, right? So, because this is always been much advocated that you should spend as much time as possible out there with your users, with your buyers, with your customers. But there's also a view that says that I don't have access to them, so I can only rely on secondary information, right? So I think it seems like that is also reflecting in the results here, which is pretty fascinating. Good. So most of the folks in product management, it's not a surprise, because I think a lot of roles in many companies in product managers are inbound, where the product owner or product manager spends a lot of time with engineering, designers, marketing teams, as opposed to spending more time in the market. I thought it was a useful context to have when we are talking in terms of how do you get to this balance? What information, what approaches do you take to balance this? So in that context, are there any design consideration that we should look at from a personalizability point of view?
Yes, I think from a design perspective, and it's equally for product managers as well. I think at the level of technology that we are at right now, we are very rule-driven in our personalization. Most of our apps have not become truly adaptive in personalization. So you define a user and you put them based on certain characteristics, behavioral data, demographic data, whatever data you have about the user. What we typically do is categorize them into segments, most likely to buy blah, 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 whatever segments you have. And then you start to personalize based on the segments. But users evolve. Life circumstances evolve. A college student becomes a first jobber, becomes a family man. You have to make sure that in an ideal world, personalization is adaptive. And a few apps are getting it really well.
Such as?
The biggest example that comes to mind is TikTok. It is a phenomenal app. It's almost evil in its ability to figure out.
I agree.
What we like.
I agree. It's so, I've heard that it's so addictive that, it's not about the content. It's about the what they've done inside that application to just keep you glued to it, right? And keep showing that.
And what they have done is they have made the app adaptable. And I would recommend everyone listening in to make sure that they download TikTok and get addicted to it. 1 week of using it, you will be addicted to it. And you will start, it's almost a journey in self-realization. You will realize, no, I'm not kidding. I found out things about myself that I did not want to accept.
Only when you pause and introspect. Otherwise, your time sinking. Yeah.
No. It's because the type of things that it keeps throwing at you also evolves. It reads your mood, what you like to watch in the morning and what you like to watch in the evening. It will show you different things. I don't know what the secret sauce of TikTok is, but the takeaway is personalization needs to be adaptive. And technology is getting there, but our product managers and designers need to be careful that they really don't put data science as something that they go to as a consultant.
A separate siloed thing that we should now think about.
No, it has to be right from the inception. You have to know how are you going to figure out what the user really needs, what the user is doing, and how are you going to adapt. It's not static. It is going to be dynamic. It has your product needs to adapt, and that's the simple part.
So that's absolutely spot on. So in that context, now it would require a product manager or even a designer to have a little bit of understanding of these amazing things that we are talking about in the context of data, right? Machine learning or models or any of those things. To what extent do you think a product manager should know this?
Oh, it's essential. It's product management 101. At Intuit, one of the competencies of a product manager is their ability to work with data. My past work was with Intuit. I think if you Google, there are several courses on data science for product managers. You don't need, product managers and designers don't need to understand the algorithms that are used to spit out the data.
Correct, right.
For instance, I'll give you an example of BookMyShow. Our data scientists have been able to come up with a very evolved predictive model that tells the purchase intent of a user. So if Sai comes to BookMyShow's app 5 times in a month, for each session, our data scientists can tell with about a 70-75% accuracy, how likely is Sai going to transact in that session? Not about Sai as an individual, but Sai in that session, how likely. Now,
that level of precision.
Yes. So now once product managers started to understand this capability, they had use cases to apply this. So data scientists and the data engineers are going to create these kind of capabilities, and product managers need to know how to apply it. So we apply it to figure out whether to show you an ad that is distracting or whether to show a relevant ad that will get you continuing to transact. Very important. But see, this is maybe maturity level 1. Maturity level 2 or 3 would be when product managers are telling Data scientists,
I need this.
And they go back and give you that.
Okay.
So working with, let's start baby steps, right? Product managers should at least understand the capabilities that data science has, and then eventually start to drive their partner teams to give them that information.
No, that's I think the most succinct and very clear answer that I've heard. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Let's move on to the third characteristic, or how it is different from a digital product standpoint, if you have.
So again, and this is something that we all face all the time, but digital products are updatable. We all know that. It's so obvious. Your apps keep evolving.
Yeah.
But that can be super frustrating. I have a mattress. It remains a sponge, memory foam mattress all its life. One fine day, because a product manager wants it, it doesn't become a water bed.
Oh, you thank God for that.
Yes. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
So the sacred contract between a user and the product that they buy often gets violated because product managers and designers get all these new technology tools to play with.
And weird ideas sometimes. Yep.
Absolutely. So just the fact that digital products are updatable, you have to be careful with how you actually are going to make that product updatable, the impact on the user, the relearning, the type of users that you have. If you're making an update if you're doing a UI refresh, it should be abundantly clear to the user how they're going to benefit from it. If you're going to make me relearn some things, or even just start to look at a different color scheme, make it clear to me why it's in my benefit. If because there's a new CEO in your company and they change their design system, that's not reason enough.
Yeah.
Okay? So the fact
and also non-intrusive way that it is so seamless that you don't have to now wait and see, okay, this is updating, let me go get coffee, right? It should not prevent you from doing what you're doing, and the experience is so. I think many people who use Macs figure this out and know this intuitively, that a system update is happening and you are not interrupted many times, right? So that's an incredible way of doing that.
So just the frequency at which you want to update your product, the frequency, the impact of your updates in terms of the behavior, the relearning that is required, the financial impact. Again, go back to the connected first property, right? There are primary use cases, secondary, tertiary use cases. Updates can wreak havoc. Secondary and tertiary use cases. A product manager, when you're saying you're empathetic towards your user, you have to be empathetic at all users.
All users. Yeah.
Your product sits in the center, and there are so many other use cases that are running off of it. You have to make sure that you're thinking about all of those and being super, super careful in updating.
So it's a very, very tricky thing, right? On one side, you want to bring in new behaviors or change the paradigm or change the experience that the users are going through, which means an update could completely change. And many apps do that today, right? You update in the evening and suddenly you open at, what is this stuff? Now, Facebook is known to do this several times before they paused or stopped, which also means that you're saying, let's not create, you have to think through first primary, secondary, and tertiary. But, is that even practical to think through all these use cases before making a rapid change? Or is that an incremental approach that you would suggest?
Well, it's certainly not possible, especially if you have a mature product, and a mature product in today's day and time is maybe anything that's more than 2 years old is mature. You can look at several ways in terms of adoption, product lifecycle, where your product is at. But the more mature your product is, the almost exponentially high scrutiny it should have in terms of any design paradigms that it's changing. So if you've trained your users, if you have a design system in place, and they're going to follow a certain paradigm, if you're going to change that, make sure you do a lot more research. Minor additions, it doesn't matter so much. Again, there are no silver bullet answers to this, but having the fact that there is going to be an impact of this update that's way beyond the little feature that you've done, and really being
are also unique to digital products is our message that here,
Absolutely, absolutely.
So for those of you who have been focused on the conversation, just a quick recap on the three things that we covered so far. Then three ways it's different. It's connected, immensely personalizable, and updatable. So what is the fourth one, Nishant?
The fourth one is what should scare most of the product managers. Your products are replaceable. I think our memories are really short, but digital products are so immensely replaceable. And if you make the mistakes of updating your products and annoying your users, they will find something that's not going to...
they won't even blink an eye just to move on to another thing. Yeah.
Digital products, who remembers Orkut and MySpace? And, a few years from now, Facebook will be in the same category, though right now we can't ever even imagine Facebook in that category. So it's just the nature of the beast. Product life cycles are becoming shorter and shorter. More and more disruptive business models keep coming in. So a product manager needs to be, and actually even a designer needs to really, really be aware of the fact that they're not designing for eternity. The product is replaceable.
The shelf life is...
The shelf life is small. So you're constantly making that trade-off between how mature and feature-rich it is going to be versus going live, as well as, in that poll that you had, the external market research had a low number. Product managers, unless you are in, a product that has a monopoly and, has no real threat. And I would argue even in that case, there are others who are, you're a bigger target if you're a monopoly. You have to be looking at all the technology trends that are ready to disrupt you, all the different small 2%.
It's all the more important to pay attention because now you're a little more confident and probably even arrogant that some new disruptor is going to come and take that away. So it's even more important to pay attention to market and market research, right?
And what happens is in most established product companies, it's somebody else's job. Product managers and designers who are building the features always think, oh, there's somebody in marketing looking at it, or there's somebody else looking at it. While that may be true, you're not really being true to your product if you yourself are not being paranoid enough about how replaceable you are. Because it can come in very fast and it will come. It's like death and taxes, right? It will come. It is a fact that your product will be replaced. How soon and how prepared you are to adapt. That's what's important.
So which means keep watching out for alternatives, keep watching out for replacements in the market, pay attention to the market. And, if you're not equipped to do how to do that, I think it's very important skills to learn, especially in terms of market analysis, competitive analysis. This is not about spreadsheets. This is not about doing that. This is about understanding what your barriers are, if you have enough moats or you need to build more defenses, right? And continuously start doing to do that. Otherwise, the competition can come from an upstart or anybody, right? So that's a very important message. Fine. So there's the fifth one. Let's get to the fifth and important one that you have on the.
So, and this is where it becomes, this is probably the most difficult one for product managers and designers to really imbibe, which is that all digital products are interdependent. What I mean by that is none of the digital products will exist in a silo. And a lot of factors beyond the product, beyond your company, will impact you. Let me explain. So if I have an app on Android, if Google changes Play Store policies about which age level is appropriate for a certain app, it can ban me because I didn't declare the right age. Just an example, right? So there are so many different things. Where if my app is running on a Huawei device whose OS has been tweaked and it stops to run, again, not my problem, but it is impacting me. If a certain type of 5G, let's say, network is
connectivity, as you said, the first one, it's so digital products are so interdependent connectivity, right? The network, for example.
So the point is the way connected and interdependent are different. So connected is your app works with many other apps and has primary, secondary, tertiary use cases. Interdependent is that it's more humbling because you cannot exist without an ecosystem of other apps and devices.
Right.
So from a product management perspective, tracking those changes, and especially for the entrepreneurs on the call, making sure that when you're making your business plan, you're not just thinking about the service or the USP of your app. You're also thinking about the small constellation of other things, devices, technologies, business models.
And the impact that may have on your app, not just what's happening there, right?
So you are interdependent. You are already reliant on all of them to work, to move in cohesion for you to be successful. And if you're not paying attention to how they are evolving, it would again impact you.
Awesome.
So it's the most difficult thing to do, and but
also frustrating sometimes. I think people who build not just mobile apps, but even before applications for different hardware systems know the kind of frustration. But there, the dependency was limited to one or two things. But now you have a whole ecosystem that you are dependent on, and any change in that would impact the experience of your product. So that considerations could be daunting actually to a product manager, right? And a designer too. So I think we are rapidly approaching a time, but before we move, I think no discussion on digital products is complete without bringing in something product managers and even these days designers are getting obsessed with is about metrics, right? So, the moment you start metrics, lots of acronyms, 3-letter and 4-letter acronyms get thrown in, both, CAC, LTV, NPS, ARR, daily active users. I don't want to go the whole thing, but is there a approach, is there a way that you believe that product folks can start thinking and say, of all these metrics that exist here, for my business, for my product, what is the one that I should focus on? Now, there is no single answer to it, but I'm just asking, is there an approach or a framework to do that?
So there are, again, you're absolutely right. There are lots of metrics, and I'll tell you what I follow and what I find the most useful. It's called, and you can Google it. It's called the Northstar Framework. I find that in some critics call it oversimplifying, but I find it's very unifying. It helps align the entire product group or the entire business unit in one direction. You have to have a key North Star metric. Then you can break it down. So your customer acquisition team will align to the North Star metric, and your initial user experience product managers and designers will make sure that they're aligning, and then they may have their own sub metrics. Same, when your payment team or whatever is your core functionality, all of those teams will align, but they're all aligned in smaller granular levels to the North Star metric. For example, at BookMyShow, again, I'll give you an example of BookMyShow. Our North Star metric is 4 transactions in a year.
Okay.
We know that if I can get you to book 4 times in a year, your stickiness to my product goes through the roof. So instead
and how did you come to that metric? Because similar products, similar services could have taken a different thing, right? Which is an LTV approach, lifetime value. But in your organization, who makes that decision to say this is our North Star metric?
So it's a chicken and egg problem, right? When we are a mature product, so we have a lot of historical data to be able to come up with these kind of predictions. When you're depends upon the life cycle that you're in. If you're an early stage product, maybe acquisition and rate of acquisition is what you're looking for, if that's what's going to help you. So North Star metric has to be a blend of what your business goals are as well as what your product goals are, right? What is the problem that you're solving from a consumer perspective, and how are you planning to monetize it? So both of them can get blended into that North Star metric. And it'll adapt as you go through the life cycle of your product, and as you get people, as your business model matures, as your product features mature, you may choose to adapt your North Star metric from one time to the other. At any given time, the value of a North Star metric is, it's easy to understand, it's easy to articulate, It's easy to rally your teams. So for your quarterly plans, for your yearly plans, it's easy to get designers, product managers, engineers, everyone focusing on one thing. And then breaking it down into sub things. So whether it's, the conversion rate or the engagement time on site or whatever is the metric that you're looking at under the little part that the product manager individually is owning, as long as it's lining up to that Northstar metric, they're all aligned towards the direction.
You're saying there are secondary metrics now that will support your Northstar metrics.
So we always ask product managers to prove how your secondary or tertiary metric is actually aligning towards the Northstar. That's a simple answer.
No, that's very clear. I hope many of the audience got that. So let me just take an audience question. There have been, by the way, Nishant, lots of interesting questions on the LinkedIn thread. So I'd request you to take some time later when you can. And in that LinkedIn thread, if you could respond to some of these things, I'm sure people would appreciate that. But let me pick one here, in the interest of time. And I see a lot of the ones, the initial ones are more around, BookMyShow itself, which is many people appreciating the whole value chain that you've explained, where, BMS is playing these days. But the one question is, when we are talking, again, to summarize to folks on the 5 different ways that, Nishant so clearly articulated. It starts with connected, it starts and then personalized, personalizable, if you will, updatable, replaceable, and interdependent, right? So these are 5 unique characteristics of digital products. And in that context, Chaitali Patak asked, right, when you're saying that digital products have all these characteristics, are we now talking more about a product experience or providing a lot more than that to the consumer? Because the customer is not looking at this as a product anymore, right? They are looking to do something with it. They are looking to, an experience. In BookMyShow case, I happen to use BookMyShow because I want to get tickets to the favorite movie that got launched yesterday and go there and watch it with my friends. So when you mix all of these things, the characteristics of digital, it goes beyond. Is it going beyond product experience is the question.
The simple answer is yes, it is. But that's why product managers are valued.
Yeah.
And
designers, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely, product managers and designers. I've got into the habit of thinking of them as a unit.
Yes.
My team, product managers.
You're rolled into one, so yeah.
Actually, a lot of the responsibilities, the lines are getting blurred increasingly between product managers and designers. At least in my teams, and I've seen it several other places as well. Yes, to the question, yes, we are going beyond just the product experience because of these factors. A product manager, a designer, or actually an entrepreneur, a business owner has to think about all of this, right? It's no longer about just a simple transaction. If I'm going in the non-digital world and buying a physical thing, if I buy 1 kilogram of atta, that's what it is. The transaction is over. My wheat flour is not going to connect to somebody else. It's not going to update itself into something else. It's a very simple transaction. But the experience that you're talking about is hinged upon so many other factors. As a user, I still only care for the experience. But as a product manager and designer, I have to be aware about the ecosystem in which that experience is working. So yes, it's going beyond that experience, but that's the reality. That's what you have to do.
Yep. No, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nishant, for taking your time and amazing insights. So before you go, just a quick shout out to other folks who've been asking questions: Ramaraju, Praveen, Sauradeep, Samir, lots of folks, and about 20-25 questions that I'm seeing on the thread, and request you, maybe spend a few minutes later when you get some time and answer some of the questions there. Appreciate that doing. So before we wrap up, just a few things that I wanted to show, and let me start sharing my screen so that folks can see what I'm showing. So the best question today goes to, for this session, not today, for this session goes to Chaitali. And congratulations, Chaitali. You will be getting an award pretty soon, a digital one. Unfortunately, we can't do a physical one these days, probably for some time now. But the leaderboard, here is how the leaderboard looks for this session, right? Leaderboard, as I said, the beginning, couple of actions. For each action, you get gain points, and then whoever is on the top of the list. Looks like Vikas has been competing or probably just going and continuously doing these actions on the leaderboard, because we had the same person get that. Now, Vivek, I think you get an opportunity to sit down one-on-one with 30 minutes with an executive for a career path counseling. Congratulations. And with that, before I hand off to Sonal, can we bring the feedback poll quickly so that before folks start dropping off, we can do that. Thank you, folks. I really appreciate you taking time. It's 10 o'clock. I know, it's dinner time or past dinner time. I'm sure working from home has extended the days, but do take the poll quickly, and then we can wrap up. Again, Nishant, thank you so much for joining us for this session. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
hosting me, Sai, and hope everyone stays safe.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Take care. Bye. Thank you. Over to you, Sonal.
Thank you, Sai. Thank you everyone for attending the session today. We have 2 great upcoming sessions tomorrow as well. It starts at 8 p.m. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, I would suggest don't miss these two. Again, very fascinating insight, I'm sure, from very accomplished folks. Amit Fadnis, who was an ex-managing director of Cisco in India, he's now a chief digital officer in GE Healthcare. The session is on 5 digital skills must for every engineering leader. So looks like a lot of you who are here today, which said other, is from that side, so you'll benefit it. And Akshay from CureFit, right, is going to talk about product-led growth. Now, this is a very hot area. Product-led growth, complements the digital product management that we just had. So, don't miss these sessions as well. Until then, see you and good night. Thank you.
See you tomorrow, everyone. Thank you. Good night.